Hi there. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the beach as I walked along the shore. The sound of the waves crashing against the sand usually brought me a sense of peace. But tonight, there was an unsettling feeling in my gut that I couldn't shake. Maybe it was the way Rebecca had been acting lately, distant and secretive. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. As I strolled further down the beach, I saw a small group of people gathered near a beachfront bar. Laughing and chatting, they seemed to be having a good time. I squinted, trying to make out their faces, and my heart stopped. There, among the group, was Rebecca. My Rebecca. But she wasn't alone. She was in the arms of another man, a tall, handsome guy who looked like he belonged on the cover of a magazine. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. For a moment, I thought maybe I was mistaken, that it couldn't possibly be my wife. But as I got closer, there was no denying it. It was her. She was laughing, her head thrown back, completely at ease in this stranger's embrace. Rage and betrayal surged through me. How could she do this to me? To us? We had been married for 17 years, built a life together, and shared dreams and struggles. And now, here she was, throwing it all away for some fleeting thrill. I felt my fists clench at my sides, but I forced myself to stay calm. Confronting her here in front of all these people wouldn't solve anything. I needed to think, to process what I had just witnessed. I turned and walked away, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. How long had this been going on? Who was this man? And why? As I made my way back to our hotel room, memories of our life together flashed before my eyes. Our wedding day, the birth of our children, the countless moments of joy and sorrow we had shared. Was it all a lie? Had she been deceiving me for years? Or was this something new? By the time I reached our room, my anger had turned to a deep, aching sadness. I knew I had to confront her, to get answers, but I also knew that whatever happened next, our lives would never be the same again. Over the past few months, Rebecca's behavior had become increasingly strange and suspicious. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just my imagination, or maybe she was stressed with work. But as time went on, the signs were too obvious to ignore. It began with her late nights. Rebecca, who had always been home in time for dinner, started having more and more evening meetings. "It's just work, John," she'd say with a tired smile. But her eyes were distant, and I couldn't help but notice the way she'd avoided my gaze when I asked her about it. Then there were the phone calls. She'd step out of the room whenever her phone rang, speaking in hushed tones that made my stomach churn with anxiety. Once I saw the name Mark flash on her screen before she hurriedly silenced it. "Just a colleague," she explained, but her voice lacked its usual warmth. Her behavior at home changed too. Rebecca became more withdrawn, spending hours on her phone or laptop, often laughing at messages I couldn't see. When I asked what was so funny, she'd give me a vague answer, then change the subject. The intimacy we once shared was slipping away, replaced by a cold, uncomfortable distance. Around the same time, Rebecca started bringing home expensive gifts. It started with a new handbag, Gucci, I think. She was so excited, showing it off to me with a big smile. "Isn't it beautiful?" she asked, twirling it around. I nodded, though a part of me wondered how we could afford such luxuries. But the handbag was just the beginning. Soon there were designer dresses, shoes, and jewelry. Each new item seemed more extravagant than the last. When I questioned her about it, she'd wave it off, saying she got a great deal or that it was just a little treat for herself. "I've been working so hard, John. I deserve to spoil myself a bit." The breaking point came when she drove up in a brand new black Mercedes. "Look what I got!" she exclaimed, her face alight with excitement. "It's my dream car!" I stood there stunned. "Rebecca, how did we afford this?" She waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, it's on a great lease deal. And besides, with the new opportunities at work, we'll be able to afford it easily." "What new opportunities?" I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, but there was something else there too, something I couldn't quite place. "Oh, just some potential promotions and bonuses. My new client has been impressed with my work." As she spoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Her explanations were always just vague enough to leave me with questions. Who was this new client? And what kind of work was she doing that suddenly afforded us such luxuries? One night, After Rebecca had gone to bed, I found myself wandering into our walk-in closet. I ran my fingers over the silky fabrics and sparkling jewels, feeling a strange mix of awe and unease. Each piece told a story, but it was a story I didn't fully understand. I wanted to be happy for her, to share in her excitement, but I couldn't shake the feeling that these gifts came with a hidden cost. As the months went by, the tension in our home grew. Rebecca's explanations became more rehearsed, her smiles more forced. The more I pressed for answers, the more evasive she became. I felt like I was losing her, one designer handbag at a time. It wasn't just the material things that bothered me. It was the distance they symbolized, the growing chasm between us. Rebecca's world was becoming one of luxury and secrecy, while I was left on the outside, struggling to understand what had happened to the woman I married. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. The strange behavior and lavish gifts were signs of something much deeper, something that threatened to unravel everything we had built together. I had to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The unease had been building for months, and I could no longer keep my suspicions to myself. I had to confront Rebecca about her changed behavior and the secrets she was hiding. One evening, after another late night when she came home smelling of unfamiliar cologne, I decided it was time. We were sitting in the living room. The tension was palpable, the silence between us heavy and uncomfortable. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "Rebecca, we need to talk." She looked up from her phone, her expression wary. "What about John?" I hesitated, unsure of how to begin. "It's about everything that's been going on lately. The late nights, the phone calls, the expensive gifts. You've been acting so differently, and I can't help but feel like you're hiding something from me." Rebecca's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. But she quickly composed herself, her expression turning defensive. "What are you trying to say, John? That I'm cheating on you?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I don't know, but I need to understand why you're acting this way. Who is Mark, and where are you getting the money for all these things?" She laughed, a sound that was more bitter than amused. "Mark is just a colleague, John. I've told you that already. And the money? I've been working hard, getting bonuses and commissions. Why is it so hard for you to believe that I could be successful on my own?" Her words stung, but I pressed on. "It's not about your success, Rebecca. It's about the secrecy, the late-night calls, the expensive gifts that don't make sense given our finances. You're distant, and I feel like I'm losing you." Rebecca's expression softened for a moment, but then she shook her head, her jaw set stubbornly. "John, you're just being paranoid. You're jealous and insecure, and you're letting it cloud your judgment. I've done nothing wrong." Her denial felt like a slap in the face. "I'm not jealous," I insisted, though I could hear the desperation in my voice. "I'm worried. I love you, and I don't understand what's happening to us." Rebecca stood up, crossing her arms. "John, nothing is happening to us. You're imagining things. I've been working hard, and I deserve to enjoy the fruits of my labor. If you can't accept that, then maybe you need to look at your insecurities." I stood as well, feeling a surge of frustration and helplessness. "Rebecca, this isn't just about me. This is about us, our marriage. If you can't be honest with me, then how can we move forward?" She sighed, looking away. "John, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you questioning me and doubting me. Maybe you need to trust me more and stop looking for problems that aren't there." With that, she walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, feeling more lost and alone than ever. I wanted to believe her, to trust that she was telling the truth. But deep down, I knew that something was wrong, and her denial only made the pain worse. As I stood there in the empty room, I realized that this confrontation had only deepened the divide between us. Rebecca's words echoed in my mind, but they did little to ease my fears. I was left with more questions than answers, and a sinking feeling that the truth was slipping further away. The confrontation with Rebecca had left me more confused and desperate than ever. Her constant denials and evasions only fueled my suspicions, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. That's when I decided to hire a private detective. I met with Thomas Parker, a well-recommended investigator, in a small coffee shop on the outskirts of town. He was a tall, middle-aged man with sharp eyes and an air of quiet confidence. As I sat across from him, I felt a mixture of hope and dread. I need to know if my wife is cheating on me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Thomas nodded, his expression serious. I'll find out what's going on, Mr. Anderson. I'll need some basic information about her schedule, places she frequents, and any details you think might be relevant. I provided him with everything I could think of: Rebecca's work hours, her favorite restaurants, and the names of her colleagues, including Mark. As I spoke, I could feel the weight of my fears pressing down on me, but I knew this was the only way to get the answers I needed. Days turned into weeks, and the waiting was agony. Every time Rebecca left the house, I wondered if she was meeting someone else. Every phone call she took in another room felt like a betrayal. I tried to act normal, to keep my suspicions hidden, but it was tearing me apart inside. One evening, Thomas called. "Mr. Anderson, I have some information. Can we meet tomorrow?" My heart raced. "Yes, of course. Where?" "There's a park near your house. Let's meet there at 10 a.m. The next morning, I arrived at the park early, my mind swirling with possibilities. I saw Thomas sitting on a bench, a manila envelope in his hands. As I approached, he stood up and shook my hand. "Mr. Anderson, I have some evidence I think you'll want to see." We sat down, and Thomas opened the envelope, pulling out a series of photographs. "These were taken over the past 2 weeks," he explained. The first photo showed Rebecca walking into a restaurant, her arm linked with Mark's. The next few pictures captured them having dinner, their faces close together, sharing intimate looks. There were photos of them entering a hotel, holding hands, and finally, a series of shots taken through a window, showing them in a passionate embrace. My stomach churned, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I can't believe this," I stammered, my voice trembling. "Are you sure this is real? There must be some mistake." Thomas shook his head gently. "I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, there's more." He handed me a stack of documents. "These are financial records I was able to obtain. Your wife has been receiving large sums of money from an account linked to Mark. It appears he's been funding her extravagant purchases." I stared at the documents, the numbers blurring together. The reality of the situation hit me like a freight train. Rebecca wasn't just cheating on me. She was living a double life, funded by another man. The expensive gifts, the late nights, the distant behavior. It all made sense now, but it didn't make it hurt any less. "Why?" I whispered, more to myself than to Thomas. "Why would she do this to me? To us?" Thomas placed a hand on my shoulder. "I can't answer that for you, Mr. Anderson. But now you have the truth. What you do with it is up to you." I thanked Thomas and walked back to my car, the envelope clutched tightly in my hands. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, and a deep, aching sense of loss. The woman I had loved and trusted for 17 years had been lying to me, using me. The life we had built together was a sham, a facade hiding her deceit. That night, I couldn't bring myself to confront Rebecca. I needed time to process everything, to figure out what my next steps would be. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt a hollow emptiness settle in my chest. The truth was out, and there was no going back. The days that followed were a blur. I avoided Rebecca as much as possible, unable to look at her without seeing the images Thomas had shown me. I spent hours driving around aimlessly, trying to make sense of my shattered world. Friends and family noticed my withdrawn behavior, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. The weight of the secret was too heavy to share. One evening, as the sun set, casting a golden glow over our living room, I found myself standing by the window, the envelope in hand. I knew I couldn't avoid the confrontation any longer. Rebecca deserved to know that I knew the truth, and I deserved answers. I turned to find her sitting on the couch, her attention focused on her phone. "Rebecca," I said, my voice steady but strained. She looked up, her eyes widening at the sight of the envelope. "We need to talk." The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. Rebecca's lover was not just any man, but Mark, a wealthy businessman who had promised her a life of luxury and wealth beyond anything I could provide. The realization of the depth of her betrayal was overwhelming. After the meeting with Thomas, I couldn't face Rebecca that night. Instead, I retreated into myself, trying to process the avalanche of emotions. The following morning, I decided to dig deeper. I needed to understand the full extent of what was happening. I called Thomas again, asking for more information about Mark. Within a few hours, he had sent me a detailed dossier. Mark Donovan was a well-known figure in the business world, with a staggering net worth. He owned several companies, had numerous properties around the world, and was often seen in the company of celebrities and politicians. As I read through the documents, the pieces of the puzzle started to fit together. The late nights, the expensive gifts, the new car, all of it was funded by Mark. Rebecca hadn't just fallen for another man. She had been seduced by the promise of a life I could never give her. That evening, I found myself once again in the living room, the envelope of evidence in hand. Rebecca was sitting on the couch, her eyes flicking up to meet mine as I entered the room. There was a moment of silence, thick with tension and unspoken words. "Rebecca," I began, my voice steady but filled with an edge of anger. "We need to talk." She put her phone down, her expression wary. "What is it, John?" I walked over and handed her the envelope. "I know everything. About Mark, about the money, about the affair." Her eyes widened as she took the envelope, her hands trembling slightly. She opened it and looked at the photographs, the financial records. Her face paled, and she looked up at me, guilt and fear evident in her eyes. "John, she started, but I cut her off. "How long, Rebecca? How long have you been lying to me?" She swallowed hard, tears welling up in her eyes. "It started about 6 months ago," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I met Mark at a work event. He was charming and successful, and he made me feel special. He promised me a life I never thought I could have." I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. "And what about our life, Rebecca? What about the 17 years we've spent together? Was all of that meaningless to you?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, John, it wasn't meaningless, but I got caught up in it. The excitement, the money. I was unhappy, and Mark seemed like the answer to all my problems." "Unhappy?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You were unhappy, so you decided to betray me? To throw away everything we had for a man who could buy you expensive things?" Rebecca sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "I'm so sorry, John. I never wanted to hurt you. I was selfish and stupid." I took a deep breath, trying to control the storm of emotions inside me. "Why didn't you talk to me, Rebecca? Why didn't you tell me you were unhappy? We could have worked through it together." She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. "I didn't know how. I was afraid. And then Mark came along, and it all seemed so easy. But I never stopped loving you, John." Her words felt hollow, a weak attempt to salvage something from the wreckage of our marriage. "Love?" I said bitterly. "Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't lie and sneak around. You made a choice, Rebecca. You chose Mark and his money over our family, over me." The room was silent except for her sobs. I felt a hollow emptiness inside me, a void that her betrayal had created. "I need some time to think," I said finally, my voice cold. "I can't look at you right now." I turned and walked out of the room, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. As I left the house, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The life I had known, the future I had imagined, was gone. Rebecca's betrayal had shattered it all, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a broken heart. The silence that followed my confrontation with Rebecca was unbearable. Days passed, each one more suffocating than the last. I could barely look at her without feeling a surge of anger and betrayal. The air between us was thick with tension, a fragile piece that was bound to shatter. One evening I came home from work, exhausted and on edge. Rebecca was sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her phone. The sight of her, so calm and detached, sent a wave of frustration through me. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Rebecca, we need to talk," I said, my voice strained. She looked up, her expression guarded. "What now, John?" I slammed my keys on the counter, the sound echoing through the room. This mess you've made of our lives. You think we can just go on like nothing happened? Like you didn't betray me for some rich guy?" Rebecca's face hardened, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. "I told you, John. I'm sorry. What more do you want from me?" "I want the truth!" I shouted, my anger boiling over. "I want to know why you did it. Why did you throw away everything we had for money?" She stood up, her anger rising to meet mine. "You want the truth? Fine. Yes, it was about the money. Mark promised me a life of luxury, something you could never give me." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "So that's it? Our entire marriage meant nothing to you? 17 years, and all you cared about was money? Rebecca's eyes flashed with anger and frustration. It's not that simple, John. I was unhappy. I felt trapped. And then Mark came along and showed me a different life, one where I didn't have to worry about bills or saving for the future. And you think that justifies what you did? I asked, my voice shaking with fury. You think money can replace love, trust, and loyalty? I never stopped loving you, she said, her voice breaking. But I wanted more. I wanted a life where I didn't have to worry about anything. I shook my head, disbelief and anger coursing through me. You're selfish, Rebecca. You destroyed our family for your greed. Do you even realize what you've done? Tears streamed down her face, but I couldn't find it in me to feel any sympathy. I'm sorry, John. I made a terrible mistake, but I can't change what's happened. I took a step back, my heart aching with the weight of her words. No, you can't, and neither can I. You've shattered everything we had. Rebecca collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. I felt a cold emptiness settle over me, the love I once had for her buried under layers of pain and betrayal. As I walked out of the room, I knew our marriage was beyond repair. Rebecca's confession had laid bare the stark truth. She had chosen money over love, and in doing so, had destroyed the very foundation of our life together. The argument with Rebecca left me feeling hollow and shattered. Her admission that she had betrayed me for money was like a dagger to my heart. I felt like everything I had ever believed in, everything I had worked for, had been ripped away from me in an instant. I was left standing amidst the ruins of my life, struggling to breathe. The days that followed were a blur of numbness and pain. I went through the motions of daily life, but I felt detached, like I was watching someone else live my life. Work was a welcome distraction, but even there, I found it hard to focus. My thoughts were consumed by the betrayal, by the images of Rebecca with Mark, and by the harsh words we had exchanged. I spent a lot of time driving around aimlessly, trying to clear my head, but the pain followed me wherever I went. The places that had once brought me joy now felt tainted by the shadow of what had happened. Even our home, which had been a sanctuary, felt like a prison filled with memories that cut like knives. Nights were the worst. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I might have missed. I wondered if there had been a way to prevent this, if I could have done something differently. The self-doubt and regret gnawed at me, making sleep impossible. One night I found myself sitting in the living room, surrounded by photographs of happier times. Pictures of our weddings, family vacations, and celebrations. Each one was a painful reminder of the life we had built together, a life that now felt like a cruel illusion. I picked up a photo of Rebecca and me on our honeymoon, both of us smiling and carefree. The memory felt like it belonged to someone else. Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized just how deeply I had loved her, and how completely she had shattered my trust. I had given her everything, and she had thrown it away for a life of luxury with another man. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of despair. Friends and family tried to reach out, but I found it hard to talk about what had happened. How could I explain the depth of my pain? How could I make them understand the hollow emptiness that had taken over my heart? I appreciated their concern, but I felt isolated, trapped in my anguish. I tried to keep busy, to fill the void with activities and distractions, but nothing seemed to help. Every moment was a reminder of what I had lost, of the life that had been ripped away from me. The future felt uncertain and bleak, and I didn't know how to move forward. One evening, as I sat alone in the darkness, I realized that I couldn't continue like this. I needed to find a way to heal, to rebuild my life from the ashes of my broken heart. It wouldn't be easy, and I knew the scars would remain, but I couldn't let Rebecca's betrayal define me. I had to find a way to move on, to reclaim my sense of self and my hope for the future. The journey ahead was daunting, and I had no idea where to start. But as I sat there, surrounded by the remnants of my past, I made a silent promise to myself. I would survive this. I would find a way to heal, to rebuild, to find joy again. It would take time and it would be painful, but I owed it to myself to try. With a deep breath, I wiped away my tears and stood up. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but I knew I had to take the first step. I didn't know what the future held, but I was determined to face it, to find a way to live again, even with a broken heart. As I sat alone in the quiet of the evening, Memories of happier times flooded my mind. It was hard to believe that 17 years had passed since Rebecca had walked into my life, filling it with light and laughter. We met at a mutual friend's party, a chance encounter that changed everything. Rebecca had been radiant that night, her smile drawing me in like a magnet. She was witty, intelligent, and beautiful in a way that took my breath away. From the moment we started talking, I knew she was someone special. We spent hours that evening, lost in conversation about everything and nothing. We discovered shared interests, laughed at the same jokes, and found comfort in each other's company. By the end of the night, I knew I had found my soulmate. Our relationship blossomed quickly. We went on adventures together, explored new places, and dreamed of a future filled with love and happiness. Rebecca supported me through tough times and celebrated with me during the good ones. She was my rock, my confidant, my best friend. I remembered the day I proposed to her, nervous but filled with certainty that she was the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Her tearful yes was the happiest moment of my life. We planned our wedding together, pouring our hearts into every detail, dreaming of the life we would build as husband and wife. In the years that followed, we faced challenges and triumphs together. We bought our first home, welcomed our children into the world, and navigated the ups and downs of parenthood. Through it all, our love only grew stronger, deepening with each passing year. I recalled the simple joys we shared: Sunday mornings spent in bed, lazy afternoons in the backyard, and quiet evenings curled up on the couch. It was in those moments, surrounded by love and laughter, that I felt truly blessed. But now, as I sat alone with my memories, those moments felt like distant echoes of a life I could no longer reach. Rebecca's betrayal had shattered our past happiness, leaving me adrift in a sea of heartache and regret. I closed my eyes, trying to hold on to the warmth of those memories, to remind myself that love, real love, was still possible. Despite the pain, despite the betrayal, I knew that the love we had shared was genuine. It had shaped me, defined me, and given me the courage to believe in second chances. As I opened my eyes, a sense of determination washed over me. I couldn't change the past, but I could honor the love we had shared by finding a way to heal and move forward. Rebecca's betrayal had wounded me deeply, but it hadn't destroyed my capacity to love or to hope. With a sigh, I stood up and walked over to the shelf where our wedding album sat. I ran my fingers over the photographs, tracing the contours of Rebecca's smile and the sparkle in her eyes. Despite everything, she had been my first and only love, and the memories we had created together will always hold a special place in my heart. As I looked at our wedding photo, I whispered to myself, I will remember the happiness we had, and I will find a way to make peace with the pain. Amid my shattered world, Tom and Jennifer emerged as beacons of light and hope. They were more than friends. They were my pillars of strength during the darkest days of my life. Tom and I had been friends since college, bonded by shared experiences and a deep understanding of each other's struggles. He was the kind of friend who knew when to crack a joke to lighten the mood and when to listen quietly as I poured out my heart. His unwavering loyalty and empathy were a lifeline as I navigated the aftermath of Rebecca's betrayal. Jennifer, Tom's wife, was equally supportive. Her warmth and compassion brought a sense of calm to the storm raging inside me. She would cook comforting meals, offer a sympathetic ear, and gently encourage me to take care of myself when grief threatened to overwhelm me. Her presence was a soothing balm to my wounded soul. One evening, Tom and Jennifer invited me over for dinner. As I sat at their kitchen table, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of their home, I felt a flicker of peace amidst the turmoil. They didn't press me to talk about what had happened. Instead, they simply offered their company and understanding. "John, we're here for you," Tom said, his voice filled with quiet strength. "Whatever you need, whenever you need it." Jennifer nodded in agreement, her eyes full of empathy. "You don't have to go through this alone, John. We're family, and we're going to help you get through this." Their words touched something deep within me, a reminder that I wasn't alone in my pain. For the first time since Rebecca's betrayal, I allowed myself to lean on them, to accept their support without reservation. They became my anchors, grounding me in moments of despair and lifting me when I felt like I couldn't go on. In the weeks that followed, Tom and Jennifer continued to be a constant presence in my life. They accompanied me on walks in the park, invited me to family gatherings, and checked in on me regularly. Their unwavering support gave me the strength to face each day, to confront the pain and uncertainty of rebuilding my life. One afternoon, Tom and I sat on his porch, sipping coffee as the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold. "You're going to get through this, John," he said quietly, his gaze steady and reassuring. "It's going to take time, but you're stronger than you think." I nodded, grateful beyond words for his steadfast belief in me. "Thank you, Tom. I don't know what I would do without you and Jennifer." He smiled warmly. "That's what friends are for, John. We've got your back no matter what." As I drove home that evening, a sense of gratitude washed over me. Tom and Jennifer's support had become a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the darkness. Their kindness and understanding reminded me that while my world had been shattered, I was not alone in picking up the pieces. I knew that the road ahead would be challenging, filled with ups and downs as I navigated the aftermath of Rebecca's betrayal. But with Tom and Jennifer by my side, I felt a glimmer of optimism. They had shown me that even in the face of heartache, friendship, and love could light the way forward. The decision to seek legal advice was a necessary step in navigating the aftermath of Rebecca's betrayal. I couldn't continue to dwell in uncertainty, unsure of my rights and how best to proceed. With a heavy heart and a mind clouded with emotions, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague. Walking into the attorney's office felt like crossing a threshold into a new reality, one where the life I had known with Rebecca was now just a memory clouded by pain. The attorney, Mr. Thompson, greeted me with a reassuring smile and a firm handshake. His office, with its shelves lined with law books and diplomas, exuded professionalism and expertise. "John, thank you for coming in," Mr. Thompson began, his voice calm and measured. "I understand this is a difficult time for you. Please have a seat and let's discuss your situation." Over the next hour, I poured out the details of Rebecca's affair and its implications for our marriage. Mr. Thompson listened attentively, asking questions to clarify certain points and offering insights into the legal aspects of divorce proceedings. His guidance was invaluable as he explained my rights regarding property division, child custody, if applicable, and financial obligations. After our discussion, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced since discovering Rebecca's betrayal. Mr. Thompson outlined the steps involved in filing for divorce, emphasizing the importance of documenting everything related to our marriage and its dissolution. His advice was pragmatic yet compassionate, a lifeline in the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. With Mr. Thompson's guidance, I made the difficult decision to proceed with filing for divorce. Rebecca and I met with our respective attorneys to begin the legal process of untangling our lives. It was a surreal experience, sitting across from her in the attorney's office, the woman who had once been my wife, now a stranger bound to me by legal proceedings. "John, I think this is the best course of action given the circumstances," Mr. Thompson said, his voice breaking through the tension in the room. "It will provide both of you with clarity and closure as you move forward." Rebecca nodded silently, her eyes downcast. The reality of our marriage coming to an end was palpable, a painful reminder of the love we had lost and the trust that had been shattered beyond repair. As the paperwork was finalized and the legal process set in motion, I felt a mix of emotions: grief, relief, and a glimmer of hope for a future free from the shadows of betrayal. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but with Mr. Thompson's expertise and support, I knew I was taking the first steps toward reclaiming my life. Leaving the attorney's office that day, I carried with me a sense of resolve. The decision to divorce was not an easy one, but it was necessary for my healing and for the chance to eventually find peace and happiness once more. The decision to move forward without Rebecca marked the start of a new chapter in my life, a chapter dedicated to rediscovering myself and finding inner peace. It wasn't easy to let go of the memories we had shared, but I knew it was necessary for my well-being. I immersed myself in activities that brought me solace and joy. Sports became my outlet, a way to channel my emotions and clear my mind. Whether it was running along the beach at sunrise or hitting the gym after work, physical activity helped me release pent-up tension and stress. Travel became another passion. I embarked on solo adventures to places I had always wanted to explore but never had the chance. Each new destination offered me a fresh perspective and reminded me that there was a world beyond the pain of my past. I found solace in the beauty of nature, in the kindness of strangers, and in the freedom to chart my course. Alongside these adventures, I discovered new hobbies and interests. Photography became a way to capture the fleeting moments of beauty in everyday life. Cooking became a therapeutic escape, allowing me to experiment with flavors and create meals that nourished both body and soul. I even enrolled in a painting class, rediscovering the joy of creativity and expression. Through self-reflection and introspection, I began to find peace within myself. I learned to let go of bitterness and resentment, replacing them with acceptance and forgiveness. I understood that healing wasn't a linear process, but a journey of self-discovery and growth. As time passed, I surrounded myself with supportive friends and family who encouraged me to embrace this new chapter of my life. Their unwavering belief in my strength gave me the courage to face each day with renewed optimism and resilience. There were moments of doubt and sadness, moments when the pain of loss threatened to resurface. But I reminded myself of how far I had come and the strength I had gained through adversity. Each day brought new opportunities for growth and self-improvement, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In the quiet moments of reflection, I realized that my journey was far from over. I was still learning, still growing, and still discovering the depths of my resilience. With each step forward, I embraced the possibility of a future filled with hope, love, and the promise of new beginnings. After the storm of my divorce from Rebecca, life gradually began to settle into a rhythm of healing and self-discovery. I threw myself into work, hobbies, and adventures, finding solace in the simple pleasures of everyday life. Yet, amidst the rebuilding of my life, a new chapter unexpectedly began with Mary. I met Mary at a local art exhibition, drawn to her warmth and genuine smile. Our initial conversation flowed effortlessly, and I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't with anyone else since Rebecca. She listened with empathy and understanding, never judging the scars of my past, but encouraging me to embrace the possibilities of the future. As we spent more time together, I discovered that Mary shared my love for adventure and creativity. We explored new places, tried new cuisines, and laughed until our sides hurt. Her presence brought a sense of peace and joy into my life, gradually filling the void that Rebecca's betrayal had left behind. Mary's support was unwavering as I continued to navigate the complexities of healing from my previous relationship. She respected my need for space and time to heal, yet she was always there with a comforting word or a reassuring touch when I needed it most. With her by my side, I began to believe in love again, realizing that true companionship wasn't just a dream, but a tangible reality. Our relationship grew deeper with each passing day, built on a foundation of mutual respect, trust, and shared values. Mary's kindness and compassion helped me to forgive myself for the mistakes of the past and to embrace the future with hope and optimism. Together, we created new memories and cherished moments that filled my heart with gratitude and renewed faith in love. With Mary, I found not only a partner but a soulmate, a woman who understood my journey and walked beside me every step of the way. As I reflect on the tumultuous journey from heartbreak to healing, I am grateful for the lessons learned and the resilience that carried me through. The scars of my past remain, reminders of the trials I've overcome, but they no longer define me. Instead, they serve as a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of love to heal and transform. In Mary's eyes, I see a future filled with endless possibilities, a future built on a foundation of love, trust, and mutual support. Together, we continue to write our story, embracing each day with gratitude and a deep appreciation for the journey that brought us together. And as I look back on the tumultuous journey from heartbreak to healing, I'm grateful for the resilience that carried me through. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos.